For everyone joining us, good afternoon. I'd like you guys to do a bit of introductions in the chat room so we can get to know one another before our panelists start today and before I do the introductions. So guys, just feel comfortable. Oladotun, Omotayo, Jeffrey, Sadiq, Efe, just feel free. You can drop a few comments in the chat room, introduce yourself as we get started. Okay. Okay, guys. Good. So I have both of you now. Good afternoon. Philip, how do you feel today?
I feel really
good to have you on the call. Yeah, go on, Philip.
Yes, I feel really good. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, good. So, okay, so I have Dotun. Dotun, thanks for joining us. Oh, Philip's colleague, thank you for joining us. So guys, just drop your introductions in the chat room. Feel free, let's interact. Today is going to be a very interactive session. We'll be speaking mainly, like we've seen in the theme, the Nigerian economy as we have it today. We'll look at the realities and we'll look at projections and some of the directions SME and individuals can take as we go into the future. Okay, so let me do the introductions. So first, I will start with Ayo Bankole. And Ayo, I would like to really thank you for joining us today. I know you typically will have a busy schedule, but the fact that we're able to snatch 90 minutes of your time today is fantastic. And your SME clients will forgive us for that, so it's okay. So just a bit intro to Ayo Bankole. Ayo Bankole is a strategy and transformation professional with 13 years experience that covers leadership roles as the head of strategy groups in the financial markets, insurance, oil and gas industries. He has led many strategic projects across sub-Saharan Africa, working for brands like KPMG, PwC, Philips Consulting, and C2G Consulting. He has provided strategy advice to over 130 companies, government, and development institutions, including the African Development Bank, World Bank, ExxonMobil, and many other multinational and SME organizations. His consulting experience cuts across strategy and execution, change management, process improvement, due diligence, mergers and acquisition, and many others. Ayo is a serial entrepreneur and founder, an advocate for good governance and the growth of MSMEs as the key to unlocking Africa's economic potential. He's a convener of the Caladium Lagos SME Bootcamp, a platform he co-founded to help enhance the business management skills of MSMEs to reduce their risk of failure and contribute to SDG 8. He has supported over 4,500 SMEs so far, and I'm sure we still have that counting. Ayo Bankole has also led the team at Federgap, a company that's leveraging technology tools to provide solutions to the challenges MSMEs have with working capital adequacy and inventory turnover. Ayo has a certificate in disruptive strategy from Harvard Business School and a master's degree in political science. He's a thought leader who has regularly featured on global and local media. He's a recipient and nominee of numerous awards and mentors over 60 youth in 9 African countries, USA, Canada, and the United Kingdom. So thank you so much, Ayo, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. Okay, so to Philip. Philip is a finance professional with extensive knowledge and experience in economic and financial analysis, financial modeling, trade finance, cash management, research, and please mute your mic as you join us, and the admin can also do that for us. Philip holds a degree in economics from the University of Ibadan and worked across various functions in Citibank, Nigeria for about 8 years. He had previously worked in the telco space with Globalcom. Philip is in the final stage of his CFA program. I'm excited about that, Philip, and frequently writes on macroeconomic and financial issues. He's the founder of Equifina Financial Solutions and the editor of the Global Economic Outlook weekly newsletter, where it provides insight into the global economy. So welcome, gentlemen. Okay, and welcome. Yes. So I want us to...
Thank you for having us.
Yes, I want us to get the conversation started, okay? And Philip, I'm going to start with you. We've seen a lot of fears, we've seen a lot of worries in pretty much since the beginning of the year. It's been really, really tough for most people. Not to talk about layoffs across the global industries that we've seen, not to talk about Russia-Ukraine crisis that we spoke to actually in the last economic outlook session we had. And now to bring it back home, the realities are scary for most people. I want us to start the conversation today with a bit of data. Can you run us through some of the data so that we at least know where we are today? And as we discuss this afternoon and also plan into the future, we would have the reality spread out on our tables to consider. So Philip, what direction would you like to share? What kind of data do you have that you'd like to share with us?
Okay, thanks a lot. I think there's a lot to talk about, especially when you talk about the Nigerian economy. So I'll just run us through at least the major economic indicators, at least which shows the direction the Nigerian economy is probably moving towards. So the first I would like to talk about is inflation, because that resonates with almost everybody. Even if you don't know the specific data, you know that the prices of goods and services have been on the increase over the past few years, in fact. It's true that many are trying to lay claim to the Russia-Ukraine crisis being the genesis, but it dates far to probably like 2-3 years ago, or probably earlier than that. So the Nigerian economy has actually been struggling. So for instance, if we look specifically at the data this year, in January, inflation was at 15.6%. But as we speak, the last one for May is at 17.71%. Of course, that's inflation, but food inflation is definitely higher. That's at 19.5%, which is why, sometimes when you talk about how bad inflation is and people hear 17, people feel like it's higher. Food inflation is higher, but it's other indices that brings the entire inflation rate to 17.71%. And if we try to compare it with other African countries, you see that Ghana's inflation rate is off the roof as well. It's at 30% as we speak. In Kenya, they are doing better because it's around 7.1% now. In South Africa, it's around 6.5%. But when you look at the unemployment data, at least the last we have from the National Bureau of Statistics, shows that Nigeria's unemployment data is at 33.3%. Only South Africa in Africa is close to, or it's probably higher, because South Africa's unemployment data is surprisingly higher, 34.5%. In Ghana, it's much lower, it's just 4.7%. And then in Kenya, it's just around 6.6%. That's comparing to, and when we look at GDP, that's the measure of economic growth across all the African countries, only Kenya is really doing well. Kenya is at 7.4%. Nigeria's last economic growth data for the first quarter is at 3.11%. In Ghana, it's 3.3%. In South Africa, it's 1.9%. Now, when you look at Nigeria's case specifically, you see that the situation is more or less like what is referred to as stagflation. But probably because most of the developed countries are not experiencing it in that dimension yet, that's why they are not probably saying that, some economies have already started experiencing what is called stagflation. And stagflation is a situation whereby you have high inflation, slow economic growth, and then you have high unemployment rates, which is exactly what the Nigerian economy is facing right now. Because if you have high inflation, usually the expectation is that at least your economy is growing well to help the system, and it's a reflection of an economy that is doing well. But that certainly is not the case right now in Nigeria. And that cause for concern. So yes, despite that, the fact that, okay, the country slipped into recession in the fourth quarter of 2020, recovered from recession in the fourth quarter of 2020, economic growth has not been strong enough to drive the economy to the level we all expect it to be. That's a serious cause for concern. And the challenge right now is that even if you look at the capital importation data, and that's taking us into why there's a lot of FX scarcity right now. Of course, maybe I know your Bankole would probably talk more about how it's impacting MSMEs. But you see that those things that drive up the FX inflow into Nigeria is just not happening at the moment because you would expect that with the high price of oil, Nigeria should actually be enjoying, but it's not the case because there's a lot of subsidy being paid out, which means that what Nigeria still earns, they pay a lot of it out in subsidy. And then you hear in the news that the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has not even been remitting to the federal allocation account because of the high level of subsidy. So where do we get the required FX from, especially since we still import petroleum products, use same FX that we need to probably drive some growth in the country? We still need to get that. We are struggling to get that. And when we look further down, the other way we probably would get FX is through capital importation. And the last report released by the National Bureau of Statistics shows that that also fell by 28.09% in the first quarter. Now, that's a cause for concern because it means that, of course, with the global economy the way it is now, of course, investors are looking at their options. They are taking less risk. Everybody's trying to see how to manage their investment exposure. That's one of the reasons. Of course, there are other reasons, probably the security challenges. And then there is a high political risk as well. We must not forget that elections are drawing closer. And then you want to, most of the investors want to know what direction the economy is really going to. Politics and economics are probably 5 and 6. You can't ignore it. So that's also, and that will be a challenge probably going into the coming year as well, because investors will try to see what is actually happening, what direction the economy is going, who is probably going to emerge, and all those things are going to play a part in their appetite for risk. So it might affect the amount of inflow Nigeria gets through capital importation. But unfortunately, the FX inflow from the high oil prices is not having any effect. And capital importation, probably through foreign direct investments, is probably not going to improve that much, given the fact that there's going to be a change in government, whichever way you look at it, in the coming year. So those are the issues that Nigeria currently has. I just hope I've been able to provide as broad an overview as required.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much, Philip. But just as you spoke, I'm sure a few people might be curious to understand why there's a wide difference between what you see happening in Kenya, Ghana, when you look at Nigeria. So take, for example, the case of inflation in Ghana. You said the rate is around 30%, if I heard you accurately. But in Kenya is about 6 to 7%. And then you look at Nigeria, what are the variables that you think might be contributing to that discrepancy, given the fact that someone might also think, after all, in last we checked, Nigeria is one of the top economies. Then why do you have this? People argue every time Ghana is just about the size of Lagos. So what's driving the difference that we are seeing? Is it possible you just speak to that so we have a clear picture of what the economic structure looks like?
Okay, well, I think majorly it's how the economy is managed. Really, sometimes all these things have a reflection of how the economy is being managed, both fiscal and the monetary policies. Also, it has to do with how much dependence the economy has on the global economy. Nigeria has a lot of dependence on imports, and I think it's the same with Ghana, and that's why you see very high inflation rates in both countries. I'm not saying Kenya is that different, but they've been able to manage it, of course, to ensure that some of the transactions can even be done probably in their local currencies, which has helped to keep prices a bit down. Of course, there's still pressure on prices in Kenya, in Ghana, in Nigeria, just as it is in the developed countries like the US and the UK, where it's around 9% now. So there's still pressure, but I think it has more to do with how it's being managed.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that, Philip. Thank you for setting the tone. So you said a lot. Our growth is currently looking at 3.1. Inflation is between 15 and 17%. We still, of course, have the FX shortages. Then we have the unemployment rate going to 33.4. And if there's anything that is clear to most of us, is that Nigerian economy today relies strongly on SME segments, even though that sector is not really developed as much as it should be. And predominantly, people still look at the large corporates or the multinationals and large entities to drive a lot of our economic activities. Not to talk about the fact that we have a bloated public sector running. So now, Bankole, I want to come to you. I know, for example, that you run the SME Bootcamp. And through that forum, you've definitely had, or you still have, hands-on experience within that sector. First, I just want you to speak to us about the SME Bootcamp, what you have running there. And from there, at least we'll have a clarity as to the amount of effort that is going into that program.
Okay, thank you so much, Fumi. Thank you to the Ecofina team for doing this. Thanks, Phillips. So we started the Lagos SME Bootcamp about 5 years ago, in 2018 to be precise. We're going to do our 5th anniversary this year because we saw the huge effect or impact of the MSME space in the Nigerian economy. We have quite a number of people on this call. I am sure if we do a survey, a sizable number of people would have passed through school or get to wherever they are today as a result of proceeds from somebody's small business. There's how tremendously high poverty in the country. Most of those poor people rely on their micro and nano businesses to survive, to send their kids to school, to engage with their, what's it called? With their, to support and Iyanoluwa, can you mute, please? To support and extend hands of community to members of their extended family. And the irony of it is that these small business owners cannot afford anything else. They can't afford professional services. They can't afford to hire accountants. They can't afford to hire strategy advisors. They can't afford to hire finance professionals to raise money. They don't know anything about branding. They can't afford to hire HR. So you see that they are the ones who need these services the most because, most of them fail before 5 years anyway. And we then thought, okay, instead of these guys dying, because I have spent quite a number of years providing professional services to large enterprises, and I personally went to school. I was happy to hear that Philip also schooled in Ibadan. My entire stay in UI was financed by my mother's small business. She would travel to Ghana and come back to Nigeria with all of this import and export, right? So I then decided to set up that bootcamp to support such small businesses with access to the same high level capacity, business management skills that is available to the big companies, but at pro bono prices, right? Pro bono. So we bring in top quality leaders in the business community, professionals, partners from global firms, CEOs. They come, they interact with our community members. They train them on how to take advantage of the opportunities in the tech space, branding, they teach them about HR, they teach them a lot of things. And a lot of our community members are better off for it. We also started giving grants. We started giving soft grants to our community members, after a pitch competition, we do a pitch session. And, so this year we intend to also to even make it further bigger. And we look forward to doing that, very soon.
So interesting. So I like the experience you have. It's very grassroots, because as much as we might look at inflation, unemployment rates, look at FX, and look at all those things at a macro level, ultimately we're talking about the lowest scale of our systems take the highest hit. And that's what your experience probably is showing you. So now in today's world, because to fix a lot of the issues and the indices we're looking at, our country more and more would have to depend on the SME sectors. The SME sector's growth would address a number of the unemployment issues we have. The SME sector's growth will address a number of the FX shortages we have, because then we can improve our exports. And then we can also probably with better operational excellence, you can also improve the quality of exports coming from that segment. So with what you are seeing in your space, and I know you can relate with this from a personal angle, you can relate with it as just a consumer yourself in the Nigerian market that we're existing today. And you can also relate with it from the angle of the small trader, be it the woman that is just running a small kiosk, or a man that is running even a mechanic workshop. They're taking the same hit. So from what you're seeing with the SMEs, what are the top issues that are standing out now, given the current economic indicators we have? Your mic is muted, Bankole.
Apologies.
Yeah.
So, so inflation is the topmost challenge right now. But there are different types of inflation, right? So there's cost push and there's demand pull. So right now we have a cost push inflation driven by costs spiraling out of control and income level remaining stagnant, which is what Philip was explaining earlier as stagflation, right? And because income has remained stagnant or even dwindling, so when you throw in FX devaluation into the mix, then you see that income is dwindling. So at Naira level, it looks like it's stagnant, but then it dwindles heavily when you peg it against the dollar, right? Now, in the light of that, businesses, SMEs are struggling with pricing. So because your consumers are not earning more, you are unable to increase your prices to match with inflation, right? To match with your increased costs, right? And then you then realize that a lot of times you either have to bear the brunt of your inflation, meaning lower revenues or lower profits. That's if you are big enough. If you are a medium company. If you are a small or nano business, it may even lead to the debt, outright debt of your business. Now, what do I mean by cost push inflation? A lot of businesses run on diesel. Now, I like to use the example of large companies, because when you see how it is impacting a large company, then you can then imagine how it will be impacting the small companies, and then we'll circle back to the small businesses. We have banking halls that have shut down, that have reduced their hourly, their hours a day, right?
Yeah, operating hours.
Operating hours, right? You have, in fact, the office I am in right now is a medium to large size construction business. As I'm speaking to you, they are on inverter. There is no diesel running, right? You have hubs, several hubs that have reduced the hours. Where our office sits in Ikoyi, they've reduced the hours. Where I live, which is owned by a middle-sized construction business in our facility management business, they have even shut down diesel supply. Now everybody's gone on self. So, and the guy has pulled out. Now we're looking for a new facility manager. So that's business losing. That's people losing business because of the crazy impact of diesel costs spiraling out of control. And to put things in perspective, as of January, you could get diesel for 288 naira. As of today, is hovering around 750 naira, right? That's well over 300%, right? So you cannot increase your cost by 300%. So what has happened in recent times is that small to medium business owners are then reducing volume or quality or both, right? So as an individual, you are still earning 80, 100K. When I started my career in 2009, my income was 86,000 as an entry-level person. Today, a lot of entry-level people are still earning 86,000 or 80K or 70K or 100K. So the general income band across the country has not increased. So what that means is that, so when I started my career, I was giving you this example. I could easily buy chips, plantain chips, and drink it with coffee, eat it with coffee for lunch, and I'll be fine, right? But now, you can't, if you see that plantain chips, in fact, I made a tweet about it the last time I bought 100 naira plantain chips, and it looked as if they counted the entire chips inside that thing. So, and that is the product of a small business owner. So, this is the struggle that they are facing on a daily basis, right? Now, now remember that that's just one element of cost. There are multiple elements depending on what industry you are in. If you own a bakery, for example, importation of flour and other, byproducts of that industry come from Europe and Russia and its environment. Because of the Ukraine war and unnecessary war, these things has also shot up price. Now, there is a degree of impact that global affairs have on local business. There is now the influence of your government and the ability of leadership to create shock absorbers that reduces the impact on the people. But unfortunately, we are led by absolutely clueless sets of individuals, especially the president of the country. He knows nothing about economics. He doesn't discuss economics. He doesn't discuss inflation. He doesn't discuss anything, right? So it compounds the problem for small businesses. And again, to put things in context, about 84 to 86% of the total jobs in this country are provided by small and medium enterprises. So when these things happen to small businesses, it directly impacts jobs. People lose jobs, depression happens, families lose their sources of livelihoods, and generally the economy is in chaos. People are frustrated, and then you see increased exit from the country because people are frustrated. So there's a shortfall of talent. Even the large companies that are supposed to be building to be creating the buffer would then have shortfall of talent, right? So I think that this inflation and the lack of, because people may argue that, oh, other countries are also experiencing it because of Ukraine, blah, blah, blah. Look, you can't compare ourselves. The other countries that are facing it have safety nets. They have social security to protect staff members who are affected. They have benefits. They have stimulus packages to support, the businesses that are affected. They have good security. Here, you don't have good security. You have to spend a lot of money on security, and as things are going bad, insecurity is increasing. So the cost of transporting your goods go higher. The cost of maintaining your facility, your property, goes higher. The cost of maintaining power goes higher. So is a system, is an holistic problem that, has become, a big issue to small businesses right now, right? So I hope I've been able to answer that question so that I don't take too much time and we can go on to the next.
Yes, so also wanted to speak to unemployment, what you did. But the picture you paint, Bankole, is actually scary. That's the reality. And I always had a personal opinion that when I think of the military regime, I think the amount of free markets that exist today, some might argue that there isn't so much of free markets, but at least in today's world, it's easy for someone to think of launching out a business and to think of the possibility of excelling at that business. Now, from your own experience, because I'm sure you're dealing with young entrepreneurs, you're dealing with people that have been entrepreneurs for decades, that have also been through some very difficult economic period. What are you seeing to be the major factor that is going to help SMEs, people who run SMEs, power through this season? Because it's not easy for me to pack up, to just shut down an entire manufacturing industry, an entire manufacturing business. It means that I've lost all form of hope and possibility to keep it going. So from your interaction with the SME segment, what do you think will keep a number of them going? Because we need that sector to exist to get us out of the mess, irrespective of the governance structure that we have and the reality that it seems like we do not have safety net and we do not have systems to protect us as individuals or companies. From what you're seeing, what's that thing that will still give the SME sector room to contribute significantly to our growth?
Okay, so now I do not like to be a prophet of doom. So,
I know.
Unfortunately, I'm also a strategist. I'm not an aspire to aspire. So exactly how it is. I'm a strategy professional. Right? Now, I have a lot of clients who are struggling at this time. I have a lot of community members who are struggling at this time. Right? I own a business, so I'm also struggling, right? So it's everywhere. Now, there are two ways that we can help these guys. The first is what government needs to do. The second is what we as individuals or as people of influence or as business owners need to do from our own end, right? Now, from the government, I think I mentioned it earlier on. Countries all over the world, based on this Ukraine issue, have now seen the need to accelerate efforts at developing their alternative energy, right? Spain, for example, is upgrading their electricity transmission network, to utilize more energy from renewable sources. Remember that Spain was badly hit by this whole Ukraine war, this issue, there was protests on the street and all that, right? Now, they are also providing stimulus for the commodity and energy challenges that they are facing, right? So government cannot just be sitting in front of the TV and telling us we understand, we commensurate, it's ridiculous. There has to be a systemic attempt and effort at first reducing the federal government's input and influence on power. It has become inefficient. It has proven to be silly and stupid over the years, right? There needs to be a decentralization of power such that multiple players can then come into the picture. Because even if I do renewable energy, I can't do it at scale because there's a centralization problem. If I create an independent power plant, I cannot do it at scale because I have to connect to the national grid, which is then limited by its capacity to even distribute what I've already generated, right? So we need to even first decentralize power so that multiple stakeholders can come in and provide those alternative power to various clusters of industries and MSMEs, right? Now, number two, I already spoke about stimulus. Stimulus packages need to be provided, and not all these FOX or quasi-stimulus that or pseudo-stimulus that CBN will provide, and then we will not see the impact, right? There needs to be stimulus intervention that is distributed through various clusters of SMEs. And when I say clusters, I'm talking about unions, I'm talking about communities, I'm talking about credible associations that have verifiable linkages to SMEs and that can ensure that these stimulus packages get to the people who need it. And then you also work with those same clusters to monitor and evaluate the impact of those stimulus interventions, right? Now, that's on another level. So for us as business owners, as clusters, we need to create a peer-to-peer learning framework amongst our community. So somebody who has been able to solve a problem can teach others how he solved that problem and become a support system to each other. Number two, even at unit level, as a business owner, you also need to start thinking about how to reduce your exposure and dependence on government-generated. There's a lot of noise coming from somewhere. Okay. So there needs to be I lost my chain of thoughts. I just made me lose my chain of thoughts. Can I remember what was I saying?
The last thing you said, you moved from pairing, then you're moving to running sustainable systems.
Thank you. Exactly. So I was saying that if you are able to bring that cohesiveness, organizations will be able to do peer-to-peer learning, right? You can build a more sustainable MSME community by learning from each other, because that's the biggest issue. You look at the banking sector, as competitive as it looks, they learn a lot from each other using the bankers committee, right? The bankers committee is an association, is a group, is like a club of all the CEOs of banks and other stakeholders, right? You look at the cooperative societies that these women build in markets, they do a lot of learning from each other, provide a lot of support systems to themselves. Look at fintech. In the fintech industry, it's almost like a secret society. The way they rally around each other to support each other, they tell you they are building something for youth-led startups, women-led startups, something. They create an entire ecosystem that supports themselves. So everybody, all of us need to do the same thing. We're trying to do that with the Lagos SME Bootcamp, and I'm hoping that all of you, it doesn't have to be big. Whatever business that you do on this group, look for similar people who do it, right? Your strategy is your strategy. Because you are trying to create a peer-to-peer learning platform does not mean that you will not succeed. Are you following me? Because you need each other. You need to learn what the next person is doing. Because the essence, most people that own small and micro businesses are in need for survival. They are not in need for some fancy profit or something. You're doing it because you need to survive. You need to put food on the table. So, and if you do not build clusters that help you survive, you most likely will just die. The business will crash and then you move on to other things, right? Now, so that peer-to-peer learning is important. Number two, you need to start thinking about how to diversify. Now, diversify can be in terms of products, can be in terms of services, can also be in terms of focus. So if, for example, you made plantain chips and up until today, the group of buyers of your plantain chips are only school students, right? Your school students may not be sustainable in terms of, there's a lot of noise here, in terms of buying on a more sustainable basis. So this is the time for you to start thinking, okay, can I diversify my customer base to include workers? Who are the people within your circle of influence that are working and inflation is also affecting them? They are also looking for alternative snacks, right? Can you do an agreement with them to be supplying them? If your chips is 100 naira, can you be supplying them 90 naira in bulk over the next? So you think of alternatives, right? If you make your chips only in 100 naira bits, can you reduce it? Can you start making 50? So it's time to diversify. Who says it's only chips that you must do? Are there alternative, products that you can look into, right? Again, what I said about government, you also need to look at it individually. This is the time to start looking at how to cut costs in your production line. So depends again on the industry that you are into, right? You can, by a million mile, engage with professionals. You can join. If you follow the Lagos SME Bootcamp community on all our platforms, Instagram, social media, You can, send me a message, talk to me about what you're doing in your business and how you like us to support or provide advice and all of these things. And then, you have to then execute, because discussing is not enough, which is another issue that, businesses have. They brainstorm so much that, they forget to execute. And if you forget to implement, it's as good as not even having had any discussion, right? So, so these are just a few areas, to be honest. But again, there are a lot more. But this is one of those areas. If you have a diesel generator, clearly this is the time to sell off that diesel generator, buy yourself a petrol gen. This is time for you to have an accountant, either in-house or outsourced, that can give you a full visibility on where you are in terms of your numbers as an organization, right? This is the time for you to subscribe to an inventory or basic accounting application. And there are so many of them that you pay $5 to $10 a month, even less. $5 is just about 2K or 2.5, right? A month. And it will help you keep your basic books. It will provide you with insight and data. Data is the bloodstream of your business. If you do not have data, you will not even be able to know where the most of your expenses are coming from, where your wastage is coming from, how to improve on it, how to plug those leakages, right? So there are quite a lot of them, but these are just a few things.
Thank you so much, Ayo. So as you spoke, I also you just talked about diversifying the product lines. The other question that brings up is capital in today's world. I'm sure businesses can't power through this season without asking themselves, do I need more debt? Do I need more angel investors? Do I need my father to give me more cash to keep this entity running? So in today's world, where SMEs have to think of diversifying, what are you thinking of regarding capital? What would be the better capital structure to follow now? Your mic is muted, Ayo.
Sorry. So there's really nothing like best capital structure. It depends on the nature of your business and a lot of other fundamentals or dynamics. Now, if your business is one that, how can I explain this now? So you can either be looking for debt or you are looking for equity. Debt can be good for you, better than equity, depends on the nature of your business. Now, if you are now looking, the advantage with debt is that the person who's going to borrow you money is not interested in how you run your business, who you put on your management, and all of those things, right? He's just interested in his interest. And when you are done paying his money, he then exits and everything becomes yours, right? Now, the downsides to credit is that, or debt is that, interest rates are very high. So it depends on the margin of your business. So if your margin is about 10 to 20%, for example, credit may not be the best for you because your bankers may be asking for a loan for a interest of maybe 25, 23, or 30, right? However, if your interest and your volume is able to accommodate that, then debt becomes palatable for you, right? Now, there are also multiple types of debt. There are loan sharks. Means whatever you do not go to loan sharks. The highest percentage per annum that is allowed by law in Lagos State is 48%, right? Be very careful the type of organizations you go to borrow money. Now, if you go to banks, most likely your interest will be in double digits, annualized, right? There are also microfinance platforms who can give you shorter term interest rates. Now, if you are looking for, depends on the size of your business, you may now be able to have access to grants or lower interest income, lower interest rates. grants from international organizations, or lower interest rates from donor-supported organizations like the LSCTF, Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. I know they give between 5% to 9% or thereabout, right? And there are quite a number of them like that. However, you need to prepare yourself for harnessing those opportunities. Now, that's on the side of debt. And I'm going to come back to how to prepare yourself. Now, on the side of equity, you can either prepare your documents and go to your family and friends. They are called angel investors. You go to your family and friends to say, hi, uncle, I have this business that I want to run. These are those who have done this type of business. This is what I've done in this space to show you that I'm going to do this thing to scale. This is how much I have. Now, your skin in the game is very important. If they don't see that you have something, they will not take you seriously. So this is how much I have. This is how much I'm ready to spend. These are the assets I already have. And this is how much I need. Now, your financial model will show you how much you need to achieve what levels of performance. Now, the thing about those who give you equity is that they are sharing equal exposure, risk, and liability and everything with you, the same way they will share profit. So they'll give you that money, you add it to your equity, but you will relinquish control. So you will relinquish some parts of your equity. So if you own your business 100%, you will relinquish maybe 30, 20, whatever the person agrees to exchange with. Now, some types of equity may even ask you for some sort of control. If, for example, you want to go with private equity, they may choose to appoint somebody to work with you on your leadership. If your business is a very small business, the chances are that you may not have a good standing to access private equity money. But I'm just still going to tell you anyway, just in case you need it. So if you go to private equity, those ones will ask you for an arm and a leg. They will tell you they need to appoint somebody who will be your manager, account manager, or CFO. They will tell you, oh, you need to rebrand like this, you need to go like this and all that, right? There's always a pressure that comes with private equity companies, funding. Now, irrespective, I'm trying to think of others, but it's not coming. But irrespective of all these guys, you need to prepare yourself for those funding. And how do you prepare yourself? You need to keep records. Anybody you are going to meet will always ask you, okay, can I see your numbers, right? If it's a business that has started, they will want to know your historical figures, how much you've done. It doesn't have to be big. They want to know how you are spending the money that you are making. They want to know how much you put into the business and how you spent it, right? And all those kind of things. And I've told you, very affordable software that you can just subscribe to can help you with these things. Now, it's also important that you understand when you need money. Because everybody is raising money, because capital is the new thing, next thing to do, and tech is making it look exciting, does not mean that you need money. There's nothing wrong with bootstrapping your business, at least until when it finds its feet, right? Now, if you look at, there's what we call premature growth or premature scaling, which is when you go and take money to go and start expanding into regions that you are not yet prepared for. So if you start your business, say in Surulere, for example, and you have not even covered the opportunities that exist in Surulere, and the demand that you have from Surulere is just 20 naira. From the entire Lagos, it's just 20. And then you are already thinking about building new, expanding to Alimosho, expanding to here, when there is no demand coming from Alimosho. So you then incur a lot of costs in Alimosho and Ajangbadi, and in expectation or hope that demand will come. And then demand doesn't come, but you've already front-loaded your cost. You have already expanded prematurely. So you are now in a race to meet up with cost. Now you see that you are on your way to killing your business. And remember, if you are taking a debt, the banks will be breathing down your neck. If you are taking equity, your investors will be breathing down your neck. Now, the best form of growth is demand-induced capital raise or demand-induced growth. What does that simply mean in layman's English? It means, as of today, if you are a tailor, you have 5 sewing machines. And as of today, your 5 sewing machines can only produce 100 clothes in a month. But as of today, you have demand for 200 clothes in a month. Ready demand, your customers are giving you those demand. And you have excess, so you are unable to meet your demand. You are now outsourcing to some tailors outside and paying them. That's a brilliant business case for looking for extra funding or even expanding. So you can then look for investors to say, look, this is my demand. I need money to expand. Or you can, if you have sufficient liquidity, you can then take some money aside and say, hey, this extra demand that is coming, most of them are coming from Alimosho or Ajangbadi. So as a result, I want to go and open a store in Alimosho or Ajangbadi to meet that demand there. So you can see that you are not going to have sleepless nights because you are now in Alimosho, because you are following the money, you are following where the demand is coming from, right? So, with that in mind, and you constantly, in fact, just today, we put out a teaser in our community that people should tell us who they would, appoint first or employ first in their startup between a marketer and an accountant. In fact, I think I should put that open here now before I talk. Please just type in your chat box in your business, if you had money, who would you employ first between a marketer and an accountant? Ordinary, all things being equal. I'm waiting for you to just quickly type in your responses. There are not many, so.
Bankole, it's Oguntoye said marketer.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm waiting for others. Why accountant? Why is Michael saying accountant? Why marketer or Oguntoye?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I've seen the response that I'm looking for. Brilliant. That's the response I'm looking for. And if you go to our pages, everybody is saying marketer, marketer, marketer. In fact, and I'm going to give you typical examples of so many of my clients. So many of my clients fell into this trouble because when they started the business, they were more interested in the marketing aesthetics part of it. Recruited marketers, earning a lot of money, gave them targets, and then set up fancy offices in expectation that those targets would come to fruition. The marketers would have cleaned out, collected salaries, they will not meet targets. So it becomes a game of luck. Are you following me? Now, there is no accountant to even control costs, nobody to even track, to recalibrate budgets, nobody to say, hey guys, we are already spending more than what is coming in. And then they now get cash flow, they are trying to look for money. At times they get indebted in banks, their books, their numbers, everything becomes a mess because there's no accountant. Right? Meanwhile, accountants are very affordable. You can get a chartered accountant fresh from school for how much, 100K or whatever amount, depends on your size, right? They would rather go and get high-level, fancy-looking, marketers, forgetting that they themselves, if you cannot be the chief marketing officer of your business, you have no business building a startup. Don't suffer other people, by employing them if you yourself cannot sell. In fact, if you cannot comfortably build a portfolio that can keep your business healthy on your own, you have no business being, owning a startup, because what is entrepreneurship? What then are you bringing to the table as an entrepreneur? Right? You can as well just go and be a manager in another person's company. Your job as the founder or as the CEO is to be a chief marketing officer. Then, as your portfolio then grows and expands, you can then, look for a sales operations person. And look, this is not just aspire to perspire. These are things that we've done for in transformation projects for so many clients, and the results are outstanding. There's a difference between a marketer, a sales operations, and a sales professional. If a founder is a very good salesperson, all you need as you scale, as you grow gradually, is a sales operations person. A sales operations person is the person who follows up and executes sales conversations. Are you following me? So it is very important for you, right, to better position yourself, because I can assure you, when the problem comes and you start looking for money, you will need an accountant to clean it up, or you outsource, or you need a software, or you need somebody, right? There are 3 sets of people or 4 that you need for your business. Critical at the beginning. You need a lawyer. And when I say you need a lawyer, I'm not talking about very expensive lawyers. You need a lawyer or somebody who understands law. You need an accountant or somebody who understands accounting. And who knows the last person? You need a salesman, which is you, right? And somebody who understands leadership, which is you. So let me stop there and I'll allow you to ask me other questions.
Thank you so much, Bankole. Actually, you've spoken to a number of the points I was going to pull you to talk to us on. And I think at this stage, I want you to take a pause, okay? Get a glass of water if you need it. And I would like participants to, I think at this phase, we can take a bit of comments or questions from participants. If anyone has comment to contribute to our discussion today, which is focusing on the realities in Nigeria, and we've tried to connect the macroeconomic indices we're seeing to one of the critical sectors that we need to survive, and that's the SME sector, and that's what Bankole has brilliantly spoken to so far. So if you have anyone with comments, you can use the raise hand emoji, and I will give you a few seconds to just share your thoughts. And if you have questions, we can also take it at this stage. Let me see. Femi Dada, I don't know if you have any comments. Michael, Mohammed, Jeffrey, Omotayo. Okay, Mohammed, please go. You have 30 seconds.
Okay, it's actually just a question. Good afternoon, everyone. So I missed part of the webinar. I joined late. So I just wanted to ask, right? My question is specific, and I hope it will. I don't know if the financial markets were discussed earlier, like the outlook.
So we focused the earlier conversation, which was handled by Philip, looked more at the indices we have: inflation, the FDI, growth projections. We didn't focus too much on financial market instruments and how the interest rate or capital market is performing today. But you can also catch the playback on YouTube, which will be accessible after the event, so you'll also be able to watch it. But is there anything in particular regarding the financial markets that you think might be relevant to the conversation? You can also share.
Okay, well, I just wanted to say, so interest rates globally are trending upwards. Inflation is upwards. Our yield curve has the rates over has become bearish, like all rates have gone up. So I just wanted to know the expectations and possible reasons for what the yield curve will be doing in the third and approaching the fourth quarter. That was just my question. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip, would you be able to take that question? But before then, let me see if any other person has any question for us. So I don't have any in the chat room here. So Philip, do you want to speak a bit to the financial markets? And I think that will also be interesting for anyone thinking of savings and investments during this period.
Okay, thanks a lot. Mohammed, thanks for the question. I think it is a normal reaction of any market when you're trying to deal with inflation for interest rates to go up. So it's more or less like a tightening of the economy. So when the inflation rate is going up, the reaction is to increase the interest rates so that, of course, there will be lower levels of investment technically, and people will save more or debt will become more expensive just to control the amount of money in circulation. So you will recall that I think last month, or was it 2 months ago, the Central Bank of Nigeria increased the interest rate for the first time in about 6 years to 13%. It's been at 11.5% year in, year out for around 6 years before that increase took place. And it's the same thing happening all across the market, different markets all around the world. So because inflation is still trending up, the expectation really is that there will be either they retain it at the rate it is, or there will be a further tightening. It's not good for Nigeria's economy. And that's why we talked about stagflation earlier, because when you increase the interest rates, it's probably going to have a negative impact on economic growth. But with the way it is, it seems that there has to be a trade-off between dealing with economic growth and dealing with inflation at the moment. So I think the last one, they decided to deal with inflation by increasing interest rates. And I think they might continue in that line. So economic growth might suffer a little going into the probably the last 2 quarters of the year, even as they try to keep prices down. I think many are just wondering, they are just trying to see that prices do not skyrocket out of control or spiral out of control. And that might be the way it is. So we expect that interest rates would likely go up as the central bank tries to tighten the economy going into the last 2 quarters of the year. It will have a negative impact on economic growth. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Philip. So there's a response to what you were just discussing from Jeffrey, and Jeffrey is of the opinion, or rather is thinking, is there really too much money in circulation? Because, you know, the inflation we're seeing locally is not just here. It's a global trend. We've linked it to the Russian-Ukraine crisis. And I think for someone in Nigeria, one could actually probably pause and say, well, I was not in America where I got some sort of government relief during COVID. And so someone can say, probably you had more cash in circulation, which contributed to that in addition to the crisis in Ukraine. But locally, I'm thinking that might be part of what might be driving Jeffrey's thoughts, which is there really too much money in circulation?
Well, it depends on how you choose to look at it. Okay, if something costs 10 naira or cost 100 naira before, and it costs 150 naira now, it means that you have to spend more to get it. So what that technically means is that if you used to save probably from a disposable income of 200 naira, you used to save, let's say your total cost or your total expense was 100 naira, and you choose, and the prices have gone up to 150. What it means is that your total disposable income has also gone lower because you're spending more. So if you look at it from that perspective, you see that there's a lot of money in circulation because there's a lot more money being spent. Not because income levels are higher, as is the case in probably the US or probably even the UK or some of the other countries. That's not the case. You know, you have to look at the peculiarity of the Nigerian economy. So it's not necessarily the case, but it's just that the prices have gone up. I think Bankole was talking about the cost push inflation earlier. Prices have gone up because the cost of production has gone up. It means that whatever you were spending before might not be sufficient now. So it's not necessarily a case of more money in circulation, but it's more a case of you need to spend more. And because as you spend more, it drives inflation up. You know, that's why I said that there has to be a trade-off. And I said it would have a negative impact on economic growth because even though they're trying to tighten the economy by keeping the prices in check, economic growth will be negatively impacted.
Thank you for that, Philip. There's a comment from Efe where she's, I think she's responding to some of the things you've spoken to your Bankole, and her comment is, what I find is that companies themselves have unrealistic expectations. Their projections always show profits from year one. And I think that really holds true when you're starting a business and you're doing a cash flow projection and you overestimate how much sales revenue you really generate, forgetting that you might have unplanned operating expenses to equally cover in the first few years already in a business. The other question here, I will throw that to you, Bankole. It says, I've got a unique fintech startup idea. How can I develop it to attract investors? The question is coming. Okay, that was a direct. Let me see now. I got that that's from Akintujoye. Armstrong. At least I'm sure of that. Yes. So if you could just speak to that, I think that's the last question we have. Then we'll wrap it up.
So I'm not sure that I got the question properly. I got the context, but I'm not sure the question directly. So is he asking me? Maybe you can paraphrase for me, please.
So I think he has an idea. He has a fintech idea, and for me, this means pre-launch is simply a concept and idea. No product, it doesn't have a minimum viable product to maybe deliver initial pre-launch sales. And so he's probably thinking, okay, I have just an idea, I have just a concept. How can I develop it enough to even attract investors? So, you have to do.
So I don't know. You see, so because I had to breathe deeply because tech has become so pervasive that all of us want to do tech, and then and tech people are also not helping with regards to how they exaggerate at times the success stories and make it look very easy. And they forget to tell us the journey with regards to how to get there, right? So the high-level journey with tech is this. The first, I don't know who you are, or if I want to assume that you are not a tech person, because if you're a tech person, you won't be talking about not having an MVP. So that means that where you have to start from is to even first look for a tech partner or look for the budget to outsource your tech development. Now, if you have a tech idea, there are two things to it. Is either you have a core tech product, or you have a traditional product that you are trying to enable with tech. And what do I mean by that? So if I sell phones, I already sell phones, so there are lots of people in computer village that sell phones. Abi? That's a traditional business. But I now say, oh, I have a phone tech or telecom sales tech idea. So I want to build an app where, anywhere in the world that you are, you can just click on something and request for phone from anywhere and it gets delivered to you overnight. So you see that you want to just append that business model and by enabling it with technology, right? It's like people in insurtech, agri-tech. These are traditional business models that they are just, enabling with technology. So you are either in that space or you are in a core technology product, a product that doesn't have any offline element to it. So what's an example of that product? Let's say you want to build a payment gateway that links one bank to another or enables people to do transactions online. There's no offline leg to that, right? Or you want to, there's a product that a friend of mine built, Vendly. It's called Vendly. It enables you vend or build or receive money on social media platforms. So that's an add-on that they are building on existing technology. So there's no offline to it. There's no traditional model. So depending on which area you are on, if you are on in the traditional tech model, you have to be very sure that that business model is viable, which is why you have to build a minimum viable product. A minimum viable product means it doesn't have the full feature of what I want to do eventually. It's not very high-end tech. It's just a very simple application that I can use to test my market. And when I test my market, I see that, oh, this thing is workable, people use it, people like it, then it becomes viable, then I can push it to investors, family, going back to what I said earlier about raising money, start with your family and friends and all that. Now, if your business is the other leg, you don't necessarily need to start, again, mark my word, you do not necessarily, I'm not saying don't, you do not necessarily need to start with an MVP. In fact, the most important element of it, and this is me discussing strategy, of the other model is your offline strategy. Because if you are only enabling a traditional business model using technology, then you have to bear in mind that the original business model itself is traditional. So the customers would always be traditional. And your competitors who have already taken over the traditional method would always be a threat. So the first thing you need to do is to even first make sure you have a solid offline strategy and test your product market fit offline. So once you have your solid customer base, you then begin to adapt your technology, to enable your technology on them. And before you know it, your product market fit is solid. By the time your MVP is up, you are simply just migrating those guys onto your MVP. And then you have a solid user database that you can then go to market with, right? So tech is not cheap. If you do not have a co-founder or partner that is a tech person, or if you yourself are not a tech person and willing and ready to dedicate the hours, burn the candles to build your application, then you would need to have the money to build that application. And I can assure you development fees are high, right? So if development fees are high, means that you would need capital to spend. And either it is your money or investor money, you better be very sure that there is product market fit, that business is going to be scalable. Otherwise, you're just going to lead yourself to unnecessary depression. I hope I've answered the question. If I haven't, you can let me know.
Yeah.
I need to expand on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Bankole, for that. Efe, you have your hand raised, so just 30 seconds.
Okay. So I would like for the person that wants to do tech, it's very simple, right? In addition to what the previous speaker has said, one thing that we must realize is that because of the time that we find ourselves, funding is going to be a huge issue. I think there was an email that was sent out by, I think it was Y Combinator, and they were saying that people who are seeking funding should have a 12 to 24 month runway, meaning that you should be able to run yourself for at least around maybe 1 to 2 years before you can even start seeking funding. So you have to show that you can bring in cash. They're no longer looking at potential anymore. They're looking at cash. So it means that they always say, how they say it in tech, they always talk about unit economics. You must have your costing right. You must have all those things right. If not, you will be like some of these tech companies that are having problems. And then most of them built users on free services because they had the numbers, without necessarily charging anything. And so now all of them are now being forced to start charging for a lot of those services. So you have to have your numbers right. And I've seen it. I remember I was talking to people I said earlier that you would see some people's financial projections, and you're seeing something like, 10x or 20x growth every year. And you're wondering, like, where are you? How did you pull these numbers? And it's not just, and I don't know whether it's also, these things happen abroad as well, but I've seen it here. I remember there was one place that I did consulting for, and they now showed me their financial projections. I was like, no, I would actually suggest maybe a 5% increase. It's like, if that is what we are going to do, why should we employ you? So again, you have to be very realistic, understand that you might not make money until probably your third year, and as far as you do that, you'll be fine. That's all I have to say. Sorry, it took longer than 30 seconds.
Thank you very much for that, Ife. Thank you so much. Okay, so we don't have, let me see, no questions. So let's just begin to wrap this up. And I want you to wrap up around just next steps, really. These economic realities, 2 critical things you want the SME to really do as a prepare. And then for you, Philip, I'd also like you to speak to personal financial management, these economic realities. These are the things each individual should be aware and mindful of as we move into the rest of the year. So, Bankole, do you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. So next step, please, if you can, immediately start on a cost-cutting mission, right? Seek alternative products, input resources to whatever it is that you're doing. If there is a way to make it, to find local materials to use as alternative to maybe an imported material, please do. If there is a way to do collaboration, there's a lot you can do with partnerships, a lot, right? If you need to partner with anybody to make access to materials or skills or resources or funding easier for you, please do, right? This is also the time to, depends on how much you have. I'm a very realistic person. If you can save for a very long term, it's time to save in FX, especially if you deal in FX, right? There's no point right now trying to stash away money in Naira and devaluation keeps hitting it. And when you want to buy materials, it has become overly expensive, right? Again, this is also time to do a lot of collaborations, build a lot of networks, talk to people who can help you. The sky will be your limit. I mean, look, again, be very realistic. Anytime you are doing planning, always remember there are 3 scenarios. There's the best case scenario, which is the optimistic scenario. You will be shooting yourself in the foot if you are planning only on an optimistic scenario. Hope is not a strategy. Don't let people deceive you. I'm hoping that. Yes, you can hope, but even pastors, fail in businesses. So, some of the best pastors are not necessarily the best businessmen, right? So, yes, faith is good, hope is good, but they are enablers. They are not the core of planning, right? Because you're not the only one planning on faith, right? So the second scenario is the base case, which is the normal case. If all things go normal, this is how I'll perform. Then there's the worst case, which is, okay, if bad as bad, I will do this, right? So once you plug in those 3 scenarios, you are not deceiving yourself, right? You are not being too optimistic, right? Then please, as we are talking now, go on Google and type in affordable accounting or invent or something software for SMEs that you can subscribe to. And I can assure you they're very affordable, some as low as $543 a month. You can be paying, and anytime you do your transaction, you generate your invoice on those platforms. It automatically sends to your client's email. I bought shoes, I bought beard oil, I bought all sorts of things from small, medium businesses in my community that use such technologies. Please start using it so that you can have an account, you can have records, your business can be a bit more organized and prepared for opportunities such as collaborations and capital raise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bankole. Philip.
All right, I think, yes, most of the things Bankole talked about for businesses, I think is also applicable to individuals. He talked about cost cutting, and I think as individuals, that has to be done as well. But probably now you need a greater buffer than usual due to the rate of inflation. If you can consider substitutes though, if there are close substitutes to what you normally use and it can help you to keep costs down, and then certainly you should consider that. This is not the time for excessive risk taking, but because it's not just the Nigerian market that is, that is struggling right now. Even the global market, there's a lot of uncertainty. So it's very important to, take risk with, if you must take any risk, make sure it's not something overboard, something too, don't get involved in something too risky so that you don't put your capital at risk. And if you must invest, make sure you do your due diligence because sometimes you might want to take a long-term perspective on some of these things, saying that, okay, I know the markets are down now, but there are some industries who probably have a, when it comes to looking at the long term, there are some companies who would traditionally recover and probably do better in future. You might want to take positions in that, but do your research, do your due diligence. If you must consult a financial advisor, please do so that you don't take unnecessary risks at this time. I think it's better to preserve what you have, even though inflation is still, eating you badly, than to take any risk and then lose it all. So that would just be my advice on the close.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, Bankole, I've dropped your handle in the chat room so anyone can also connect with you. For Philip, once you respond to, if you have other questions and you respond to any of the newsletters, you can also get more information as required. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for joining us, all the participants, and most importantly, a big thank you to Ayo Bankole for spending the last hour plus with us. And thank you, Philip, for sharing so much insight. This is me wishing everyone a wonderful evening and hoping that we get very creative and smart in how we navigate the next few months. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.